All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. This is Bangladesh America Alliance. We are hosting a podcast for the upcoming elections, specifically looking at predictions, our prejudices, and also to see how this will become a national reckoning following up on the July Revolution. Today, we have John Danilowicz, who is from Rights to Freedom and ex diplomat. He's currently retired. He's joining us to join in this very critical discussion. We also have Fahim Mashroor from Voice for Reform. He's also a founder for BD Jobs. And then we have Shafquat Rabbee Anik. He is the founder of Centrist Nation TV. We have our executive director as well to be part of this conversation. Before we dive into all the election related details, I just wanted to take a quick minute from each of our panelists to give a quick introduction and then, of course, at a high level, talk about their expectations for this upcoming election. We are going to start with John and then we'll take it from there.
Great. Well, thanks for inviting me. And it's great to have my friends Anik and Fahim on as well. So this is a conversation between friends. So I look forward to it. I was reflecting as we were preparing for this that, I guess now it's 5 days away from election for those in Bangladesh. And, up until very recently, all I would hear from people is questions or doubts that the elections were going to happen. I mean, for me, once the timeline was set by the chief advisor after consultations with political parties, and he gave that narrow window of, first half of February, it was pretty clear to me that this was when the elections were going to happen. So I know there are some who will still spin these conspiracy theories, but for me, this has been the logical progression towards this point. So I think this is a good inflection point for us. Bangladesh is continuing on a journey that began on August 5th. The past 18 months, I think, have seen a lot accomplished. There's certainly more to be done. And I think it's appropriate now that we're all focusing on the next step, which will come, in just a few days' time.
Thanks, John. Let's go to Shafquat Rabbee.
Thanks for inviting me to this wonderful session. As John just said, this is a discussion between and among friends. I know all of you guys for long, and this is a pleasant moment for us to be all together, just like 6 days before the election. I guess it's 6, right? Yeah, it's 6 days right before the election. It's an exciting time for Bangladesh. The country is going to have an election after at least 16, 17 years, which is a fair election, and some may argue it is after 25 years. So a lot to be expected out of this election, and let's see how this discussion goes. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Let's go to Fahim Bhai.
Thanks, Abir. I actually echo with both John and Shafqat that it is a kind of very weighted election. But also at the same time, the election is something that is happening after a kind of massive event, massive sacrifice of over 1,500 people. So this is also a kind of emotional election, I would say. And also there are a lot of kind of unknowns because almost half of the people have not voted before. So I agree with John that there has been a lot of kind of manufactured uncertainty, but now it is almost certain that election is going to, or I would say not almost, I would say it's certain that election is going to be held on 12th February. The whole country is actually waiting for that. But as far as the prediction and all other things are there, like we'll of course discuss, but I think there are a lot of unknowns, and let's discuss those things also. Thanks.
Thank you, Fahim Bhai. Let's go to Shahid Bhai, and he is our executive member. Please go ahead.
No, I think I agree. I think one thing I want to just say a little differently, that this is going to be probably the most consequential election for this country since a long time. But in the last 18 months, I feel like we are ending a challenging period, and getting into another period. The challenges will continue, but if we want to reflect back on it, I I would say, like, the Dr. Yunus and the IG, they had many failures, many successes, but many complaints, many questions, but also many kudos. But among all, I think like they have done a good job in bringing keeping things together. At least they didn't let it fall apart. I think they deserve something there. But at the same time, one of the biggest failure, I think it was the very little progress we had with in catching the killers of Osman Hadi, and how the whole investigation progressed. And we have seen that people still have a lot of passion and a lot of commitment to the changes and to justice, and to to bring about changes. So I'll just start by saying that we would like to dedicate this podcast for to Osman Hadi, and we would remember him with utmost respect. With that, I'd give it back to you, Abir.
Thank you. So for this next segment, we actually want to dive right into the upcoming election campaign, talk about what's critical from the perspective of each of the panelists, and specifically also touch upon the manifesto, the election manifesto, and the highlights each of the alliances have taken up. So I know, Anik Bhai, Shafquat Bhai, you have spent a lot of time with critical stakeholders. So I would like to start that conversation with you first, and then we'll go to rest of the panelists.
Yeah. So the manifestos, I've read both of them, the main two parties manifesto and then the NCP's manifesto. To be very honest, I do not really know how much utility you can get out of these documents 5 days right before the election. So usually in a more advanced election climate, you would expect like a platform document or like a manifesto at least few weeks to a month ahead of time, so that the experts can weigh in. That is not possible in Bangladesh. The documents are just released like 4 days, 5 days ahead of time. Each of these are like anywhere from 44 to 88 to 30-page long documents, and some of them are fairly dense to read. So that's that. There is just not enough time for these documents to make any meaningful impact one way or the other in the election. So that's number one. Number two, there is a global trend where some may argue manifestos don't even matter. Like we know politicians from very, very advanced economies and very, very advanced democracies, they just don't even have a very solid manifesto. Like not much to talk about. They just talk about one or two items that people resonate with, and then they just run with it. I mean, examples being Donald Trump. He was like, he had one-liner, build the wall, right? So that was his first time, and the second time was like, make America great again. So it's all about marketing. Manifesto documents used to be a big item way back when, like particularly maybe at least during the 80s and the 70s and all the way up to 90s, people would really care about manifestos. So, okay, so that's the philosophical angle about manifesto. I have read all of these. Very surprisingly, both the manifestos from Jamaat and BNP have a lot of social welfare items and a lot of free items for people. And so I'm a capitalist. I'm a from a Western capitalistic standpoint, we are very worried about fiscal policy and who's going to pay for all of it. So that goes for both the parties, nothing wrong for any specific party. There are lots of promises which will be very difficult to actually provide once you are in power. And then comes the next question. Once you start providing this kind of items, what do you do next and next, right? So freebies are always risky. So all the political parties are making a lot of promises about direct transfer of cash, that kind of stuff. So we'll see how many of these things are actually done. But as I said, otherwise, these are very similar looking, very standard documents. There is almost nothing that jumps out and makes anyone really excited to read this document. These are standard Bangladeshi political documents.
So what has resonated with the electoral base so far, in your opinion, from the promises that were made?
I think BNP would make the argument that its economic promises are resonating, like the family cards, the farmers cards, the expatriate card. BNP has some nice plans around sending people to overseas countries, expanding the size of the economy to $1 trillion, increasing the number of people who go abroad. So lots of like PayPal. There's a mention of PayPal to be in Bangladesh. That's a very, very, very nice promise. BNP's document also it mentions Amazon, Alibaba, that kind of popular items there. Freelancing. So there are a lot of youth-centric, employment-centric promises in the BNP document, which people would definitely appreciate. The youth would probably appreciate. On the Jamaat side, Jamaat is all about insaf, justice. They are big on some of the popular July items. So Jamaat has gave a lot of space and preference to those kind of stuff. BNP also did the same, but Jamaat is talking more about those. So Jamaat's July items are probably going to resonate with the youth, and BNP's employment and job items will resonate with the youth.
Thank you. All right, let's go to John. So John, what's your take on the manifesto or some of the election items being pushed through? BNP has pushed the idea of 10 million jobs. Jamaat has pushed the idea of 5 million IT and services jobs. I know that's critical for the youth because the foundation of the reform or the movement in July was both, started with quotas and also jobs as well.
Sure. So just some maybe random thoughts which can be connected. So the first is, it's a parliamentary system. So it's 300 constituencies. So in a sense, there's 300 elections taking place. And while there's some clear, patterns, that transcend constituency boundaries, there's also local factors that come into play. The other thing I would say is it's interesting to think about the interim government, which didn't have any time to prepare. Whether it's Professor Yunus or the other members of the advisory council, they took office on very short notice, had to do their diagnosis of what needed to be done, come up with their plans, and then begin to implement. The advantage that the political parties have had is that they've had time to prepare. They've had the last 18 months, if not time before then. So I agree with Anik that rolling out the manifesto just a few days before the election, to me, isn't really about seriously competing for voters' attention based on the issues. I don't think it's really kind of a detail-oriented, issue-based campaign at the local level. But I think the value of going through the process of doing the manifestos is it does force the parties to think through these things. And then I think, very importantly, it allows the teams in the parties to start to gel. And again, I think both parties, but in this, I'll probably give the nod to the BNP, have assembled very impressive teams behind the scenes. So it's not just those individuals who are running as candidates for parliament. It's also all of the teams, the policy wonks who have been gathered behind, who have kind of come up with these policies. Now, all of that said, there's again no guarantee that any party will implement the policies that it promises during a campaign. And I've often found myself reflecting back to the 2008-2009 period following those elections when, frankly, all of us in Dhaka at the time were pretty optimistic because during the campaign and during the pre-election period, frankly, the Awami League was doing and saying all the right things. That they had been chastened by the experience of 1/11, that they were committed to reform, and that they would do things differently. Now, whether they didn't do so because of the way things developed or whether it was their intent from day one to abandon what they had said before the elections, we'll never know. But I think what's incumbent upon all of us and what's incumbent upon all Bangladeshi voters is to hold politicians to the commitments that they're making, whether it be in a manifesto or on the campaign trail.
Thanks, John. Let's go to Fahim Bhai for your take.
Okay. I actually think, and I completely agree with Anik, that manifesto won't matter. Not because only it is less time, to read through, but historically, manifesto has probably impacted very little in election, not only in, I would say, in Bangladesh, but also in the other subcontinental countries. Having said that, of course, like people like us are very curious on what parties are actually saying what. So on that count, I would say that just have a kind of thought type of exercise. So if Awami League had been running in this election, I think they would also probably put a kind of manifesto almost similar to what BNP and Jamaat or even NCP has actually done. So, like on a directional side, I don't see any kind of big difference with regard to economic policy, social welfare, and all other things. So, or youth engagement, youth employment, and all those things. So, I think like it is much more on how they can actually implement on those things. And frankly, I have been a little bit disappointed by the lack of imagination in the manifestos of all the three parties, including Jamaat Islam, BNP, or NCP. At least from the young political party NCP, I actually expected something more innovative and disruptive. One of the things that I like, for me, I am more curious what has not been in the manifesto than what is in the manifesto. Say, for example, like even all the kind of outgoing like advisors are now saying that they could not do any kind of big reform because the kind of resistance from the like bureaucrats. Now, have you seen any of these parties in their manifesto mention anything about how they are going to tackle the bureaucracy, how they actually plan to put bureaucracy accountable? So it is just kind of to have a commission of bureaucratic reform. We will set up a commission for bureaucratic reform and those things. This is not going to be enough. I think the people of the country deserves to know that what are the things that they plan to, because it is not Sheikh Hasina or others, like last 15 years, it is not only Sheikh Hasina and her political aides who have actually plundered the country. They have actually also been supported by the bureaucrats. So what the next government is going to do with them. And also, I think most of the, like we have been talking about reform and also justice. Shahid has mentioned about the justice of Osman Hadi, but we have a lot of other things. Like, I'm not talking only about 1,400 people who have been killed, but like last 15 years, our economy have been plundered. Like there has been like unprecedented amount of corruption and all those things. Lot of oligarchs, business oligarchs have come out of these things. So no party has actually mentioned how they are going to make these kind of people accountable. So it is not that just few political people, you just even, and in the also in the political people are also not being tried for their corruption cases. They are being tried for kind of their murder cases. So that is something that is missing. So I think that part, and also like another thing I probably have noticed with regard to manifesto, and this is my last point. I found Jamaat Islam's manifesto to be a little bit, of course, like what Anik said, it is much more July heavy. And to some extent, it is like July Charter Plus. I would say July Charter Plus, because they have actually said something, for example, the proportionality representation. So they have said that they will actually do proportional representation in not only in the upper house, they want to do it in the lower house also. We can also, of course, debate on that. Whereas yesterday, I am a little bit kind of disappointed to see that some of the commitment that even some of the items that have been put in the July referendum order, BNP's few of the manifesto items are actually a little bit contradictory. So that's why I said it July Chartered minus. For example, they have said that they will not implement the upper house in proportional representation of votes, but they will implement upper house in terms of proportional representation of seats. So that is frankly directly in contradiction with the July Charter order or the referendum. So that is also a little bit confusing. If there is the yes actually wins and BNP also has something different, so what the people of the country will be having if both BNP wins and also yes vote wins?
Right.
So I think that is a very nice segue into reform, because another thing on the ballot, very important thing, is the referendum, yes and no on the reforms, and all three parties have been campaigning for yes referendum, although Tarek, albeit a bit late in just voicing the support for yes, but yeah, the news from the ground is like, there are also some activists saying no on some Awami Leaguers. They are saying no to the referendum. So as a whole, it's a little. I think it needs a little understanding of what's going to happen. And I know you all are very privy to many conversations that we are not. And I know Fahim, you've been involved in the reforms and are very actively involved as well. I will try to be a little provocative here. I mean, like, what do you think will, happen in terms of the referendums? Is yes going to win or not? And if it does, which party coming to power will likely to implement them? Which party might be a little skeptic and hold back? So just going around, maybe John, then Shafquat, and then Fahim.
So on the reform issue, listen, it was always going to be up to the political party that won the election what was going to happen with reforms. Professor Yunus and the interim government, to me, had three basic options. They could have done nothing on reforms and just waited for the political parties to come. They could have followed the 111 government and unilaterally done reforms with the hope that the political parties would carry it forward. Or they could have done some version of what they actually did, which was to try to bring the political parties into the process, to steer it, to drive it towards a certain outcome, and then hope that momentum would continue. I think in terms of what's going to happen afterwards, I think a lot will depend on what voters say in terms of the election, not just who wins, but how close the election is, what the margin of victory is. Obviously, the stronger majority that whoever wins the election comes with, the more freedom that they're going to have to chart the course on reforms the way that they see fit. And it'll be hard to argue, frankly. If a political party gets a 2/3 majority, for example, then it has a strong mandate, and I think it would be expected and appropriate for it to, proceed in the way it sees fit, taking into account the views of others, but not having to be overly deferential. The reality is the last 18 months have seen a de facto coalition government with that necessary horse trading between coalition partners. It's likely that we won't have a coalition government after the elections, although that's always possible. But I'm optimistic that the reform process will continue in some way. It may not be as much as some, including me, had hoped. But regardless of what happens, Bangladesh is in a much better position in February of 2026 than it was, on August 4th of 2024.
Shafqat.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both Fahim Bhai and John. I have had many conversations with you, Shahid Bhai, in the past. You had a very romantic association with this process. Like you really expected a lot. I'm sorry, it probably is not going to be as such. The end product was okay, but the culmination of this whole process may not be as exciting for the people who really pushed this thing. The only reason I say that is because, let's just be practical. This is politics, and political parties have their own desires and game plans for the nation. So once they win, and depending on how strongly which party wins, their vision should be implemented on a go forward basis. So that's natural for almost any democracy. And the other thing is, this whole document was created as it's an extraordinary document. I do not know, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I do not know how many other countries ever had the opportunity to do something like this, like create a document and then entrust a upcoming parliament with the implementation, and then entrust the future leadership to do something that is mandatory, things like that. I just do not know how much precedent you have. Having said that, I agree with John's initial statement and the overall philosophy that the Yunus government at least left a document that is, aspirational, and let's see how the politics around it goes.
Fahim bhai.
Yes, like of course, like both John and Anik have not been overly excited about kind of implementation of the all the things that have been agreed in July. And I was actually much, frankly, even like few months ago, I probably would have been more excited than what I am now. But having said all these things, I think one thing is probably certain, that our next 5 to 10 years election of Bangladesh will actually, so not election, the 5 to 10 years politics of Bangladesh will be revolving around this July Charter. And this probably is something that I would say at least this interim government's probably biggest achievement, one of the very few achievements, is actually to have at least this document,
Right.
formal documents endorsed by the people. Of course, I'm assuming that people will be overwhelmingly voting for yes. So why I say that thing? Last 10 years, we all know our kind of politics has actually revolved around the issue of caretaker government. Right. So caretaker government is something that all the political parties, apart from the incumbent party in power, they actually fought for that. I can sense that next 5 to 10 years, all the parties who are like outside the government, they will be actually doing politics around July Charter, because it seems more, it is getting more clear and clear that particularly if we say about the BNP government, there is every possibility that they will form the government. The margins, of course, we can discuss about it, but it seems that they have made it very clear, particularly after yesterday's manifesto, that they are not going to probably implement July Charter as it is in the referendum. So because there are a lot of kind of leeways even put in the referendum about that the party can actually consider the note of dissent they have or whatever. But of course, there are parties who would like BNP or the government to implement all the items in the July Charter as it is. So politics will actually revolve around July Charter. That is my kind of prediction for next 5 to 10 years.
So just one thing, like, how about just I think like this, there are many unknowns. I think what if the Jamaat NCP alliance wins? Is there a difference in the approach of the July Charter, do you think, Fahim bhai?
Yes, I think like what I said, that probably both Jamaat and NCP, their approach has been July Charter plus. So they actually want to implement, or at least officially they want to implement all the items, plus they want to do some additional things. Yeah. But for BNP, they have made it very clear that they are not very comfortable of implementing all the items in July Charter as it is put in.
So like one thing I think, like, the whole country will vote from every strata, every kind of people. But I think what is important to remember that we have 40% voters are very young, and July Charter or the referendum is kind of, they own it in most of the, regardless of the party line. I have seen like all party young people, they are rooting for the July Charter. So it would be
even Awami League people actually, in one of our recent survey, we have found that even a lot of Awami League people actually, Awami League supporter
Yeah.
would actually vote for yes.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, that's my thing is, like, no matter who is coming to power, they would actually, if they don't deal it with like a very honest and in a transparent manner, I think they would be doing a disservice to their own party and the government they'll form. That's just my take on it, I think. But anyways, we'll see. I know that you are thinking BNP will come, but there's a lot of discussions that there will be so many surprises that we might be surprised. Let's see what happens on the 12th. Abir, next question, please.
That's a great segue. I think it's time we also ask the panel about their predictions. I know the prediction business is very hard to get in, but since all of you have been in this discussion, we have to ask you, what are your predictions? And we'll start with Shafquat Bhai.
Bring out your crystal balls.
Bring out the crystal balls. Yes, here's some numbers.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've spent a lot of time analyzing data, because without data, it's very difficult to make your mind. Based on all the data, and the other thing I should always say, there is no one data that tells you what the future should be. Right. So we need to use a lot of different types of data for analyzing this. What I can tell you, this is going to be a much tighter election from the sense of overall voting share. So what do I mean by that? It's not going to be like 20-60% or 30-50%. I do not think it's going to be like that. It's going to be a much tighter national election share. But that can mean anything in terms of number of MPs. For example, in 2001, BNP Alliance and Jamaat Alliance both got about 40.1 and 40.9. Basically, both were on the 40% total vote count, right? Of the total vote count, 40 point something, 40 point something. But the number of MPs were like 260 or something like that, okay? So in Bangladesh, it is very difficult to do the constituency count. So I will refrain from doing it, but I would just say the overall election path has changed. So I will make two assertions. Number one, the election has moved quite a bit towards the middle, meaning both the parties now have a lot to fight for, which was not the case last month or 2 months ago. So Jamaat has made some grounds. People have made their minds online, may have made an impact on the social media. One way or the other, the election got tightened. So I expect a much tighter than before outcome.
So the other follow-up question is about the floating vote. There's been a lot of conversation about which direction, and usually they will wait till much later, but we are at the very last segment of that cycle. So where do you see that floating vote kind of orient towards?
I do not know who really floats 6 days away from the election anymore. Right. But one of the things I should mention is that BNP is starting this election with a huge advantage, which is, I think you have seen the recent poll says about 50% of diehard Awami League people will support BNP. So even if we assume there are still 15-20% Awami Leaguers left, 10% of that is going to BNP. And then the minority population, for religious reasons and cultural reasons, would feel more comfortable with BNP. So that's about 6%, 7%. So BNP is starting the game with 15-point advantage. So they really have to lose a lot more to make the election tighter. And unfortunately, I think that is going to happen. Like, they would start the game with so much advantage, but due to some other indiscipline in the party, that percentage will get smaller when it converts into an advantage. So I still believe the most likely scenario is a BNP victory, but it is much tighter and much more uncertain than it was a month ago.
So let's go to Fahim Bhai. And I know, Fahim Bhai, you have been doing a lot of work specifically around these, looking at specific, seats and regions. So time to bring out your crystal ball.
We actually want actual numbers from you.
Yes.
Okay, but if it goes wrong, please don't say that you have been pathetically wrong. So, like, now, on a general note, like what Anik was saying about the kind of numbers. You see, there has been at least 7 or 8 polls in last 4 or 5 months that have been released by different kind of research firms or research entities, and there has been some pattern, but of course there are kind of outliers, of course. But I think I see this election. I think that it will be a tougher than what we expected in end of 2024. But whether it is going to be very close or which side it tilts actually depends on some of the kind of interplay of like opposing factors. There are 3 kind of divide among the voters, I would say. One is generational divide. It is very clear, and all the polls, whether they have given BNP lead or Jamaat very competing thing, all the polls have shown that the younger generation are much more with the Jamaat and the NCP or alliance, and the older generation is much more with BNP. And it's in fact BNP is the main party in that alliance. So this is the one divide, the young and old. Second is we have also seen the class divide, like the professional or even the students or educated class. I'm not saying that elite class. I'm saying that professional and student, they have actually been with the Jamaat and NCP, and we have actually seen that thing in even in the campus elections and all those things. The number, the pattern shows that a little bit more educated people are actually going towards Jamaat and NCP, whereas the other part of economic part of the society, which is probably more in numbers, the farmers, the laborers, the very small business, they are still very much with BNP. So there is this kind of the second divide. And third divide, as Shafquat has said, the Awami League and the Awami League voters and the youth voters. The Awami League voters are much more, I would say, probably 40 to 50% are still with BNP, and probably 25 to 30% they would probably move to Jamaat, as the other polls shows. So Awami League versus the youths who actually represent the July. So the people who have been in the much more in the, like, I'm not saying about political people, non-political people who have been involved with July directly. So their kind of propensity is much more towards the non-BNP alliance. So there is this 3 divide, like generational divide, class divide, and the other kind of political divide. So which like at the end of the day, it is also a fight not between Jamaat and BNP. It is also a fight between these 3 divides. So if you want me to predict something, I would say that the national poll still will be probably something like 45 to or around 45% plus to BNP, and Jamaat will probably have anything from 35 to probably 38. So still there will be a margin of popular vote share, at least 5% to 10%. But this time, there is an interesting factor also that we have not seen in other previous elections. There are a lot of independent candidates. So at least there are 50 independent rebel candidates who are actually fighting in the forefront in a lot of the seats. So it may give an strategic advantage for some of the like Jamaat candidates who can actually get benefit of a 3-way fight. And also, I think there will be at least 20 independent rebel candidates who will actually beat the like designated BNP candidates of Dhanesh Shish. So of course you can say that all these people who have been who were with BNP will actually rejoin,
Right.
but that can of course happen. But so essentially, Dhanesh Shish might not actually get more than 45% vote share, but it may be that Dhanesh Shish plus its rebel candidates may actually even get like 47, 48. But does that mean that the number of seats will also be something that we had seen before, about one party getting 250 and one party kind of disseminated to 50? That I don't think so, because as you have mentioned that we have been kind of running an analysis on a seat by seat basis. So we have not completed that analysis. That there is also a podcast. I welcome the viewers to also watch that podcast. So we have actually completed roughly 100 seats out of 300 seats, and we have seen that in the places where BNP is winning or is supposed to or expected to win, they are actually winning by big margin of votes. And in the seats where Jamaat is winning, they are probably going to win by small margin of votes. So that gives the picture or the scenario that even if there are higher number of or larger number of gap in vote share, the seat number may not reflect that thing like we had before. So my prediction would be BNP on Dhanesh Shish probably will win around 170 seats. I'm just putting it once again. Dhanesh Shish will actually probably win 170 around seats. There will be around another 20 people or 20 MPs who are BNP origin, but they are actually rebel candidates. They will win. So you get 190. And I think there will be around 20 from other smaller parties. Jatiyo Party may actually come up with probably 5-6 type of seats. And also local independents who are not associated with BNP. So I would put that number to around 20, and 90, the rest 90 I would put to Jamaat, NCP and their 11-party alliance. So that is my kind of prediction at this very moment.
So one quick question. We were mentioning about the small margin in a lot of the Jamaat seat. I know Islami Andolok Bangladesh is also running on 250 seats. So do you see some of those smaller margins being challenged, or you don't see the IAB being a factor?
It may actually have impact in some of the seats, but not necessarily that. We all know that historically there are a lot of animosity between Islamic Andolon and Jamaat. So even if they had been together, it was not always certain that Islamic Andolon voters would actually or supporters would actually vote for Jamaat. Right. So I think election is a very complex issue. So it would have been the case probably that Islamic Andolon, if Islamic Andolon was not there, they would probably some of them probably would vote for Jamaat, but now some of them probably would have been voted for BNP, but now there is Islamic Andolon candidate itself. The BNP might also lose some of those small number of votes. Gotcha. So it is much more complex than we see it from a kind of central position. So it is much more local and other.
Thank you, Fahim.
Thank you.
Let's go to John. And John, I just want to add
before I go to John, I just say, Fahim, you've been very specific. Thank you. And I know that social media, there's a game going on about prediction. So we'll enter your numbers with your name. You might win some. But it is eerily close to what I had predicted. But yeah, John, please.
So, John, I just want to add one more thing. I know we are running close to the time. I also wanted to, as along with the predictions and, what you see for the upcoming elections, wanted to see what your thoughts were on the geopolitical implications of this election as well. So if you could add that in your response. Thank you.
Sure. So on the vote count question, I'm certainly not going to try to compete with Fahim in terms of numbers. But what I would say is I'm going to be keeping a close eye on the turnout. And since the Awami League has very vocally been saying to their supporters not to go and vote, in a sense, the turnout becomes a proxy way of looking at how much support the Awami League actually has. And looking at turnout in past elections, my own kind of benchmark is somewhere around probably 70%. That if you get an election turnout higher than 70%, then in historic terms, it's a good strong turnout election. If you get much below 60, then there are real questions about the elections, and it has implications for what happens afterwards. The other thing I would say is the surveys and the polls that have been done have been great. I know that there's still a lot of skepticism in Bangladesh about polls. I hope that this polling culture continues and in fact expands. I wish somebody was doing a exit poll or a parallel vote count on election day to help build confidence in the results. But again, maybe that's something we can shoot for in the future. The final thing I would say on the election results side, though, is I think it will be interesting to see who actually wins and loses beyond the overall numbers. And from what people have indicated to me, that there's a chance that some heavyweight politicians, particularly some old guard politicians, may be in trouble. Not necessarily because of anything they've done wrong, but because of the demographics in the areas in which they're contesting. Because again, what I've heard is that for the Jamaat and NCP in particular, that they have some real strongholds in some areas where in the past you had some, very senior leaders of the BNP who took for granted that they would win those elections. So again, I think that'll be interesting to watch, and it has implications, obviously, for who ends up in the government. Then on the geopolitical side of it, what's been striking to me is that despite the campaign from the Awami League to delegitimize the election, nobody on the international side is really buying their argument or supporting them. Even India, which has been their strongest supporter and which has been had a lot of voices arguing for the Awami League's inclusion, has said that they will accept the results of the election and they look forward to working with the winner. And in fact, I would say that the Indians are probably more eager than anyone to reach out to the government that's formed through elections. In the United States and the European Union, key Asian partners, and elsewhere around the world, I think everyone will be ready to work with the government that comes through the elections. Again, the quality of the election will matter. If it's an election marred by violence, if there's some surprise, if the predictions of the Awami League that 60% of Bangladesh's population silently supports them and their allies, and those 60% stay home, and you have a very low turnout election, and there have been very low turnout elections in the past in Bangladesh, then international partners may try to jockey for position and hedge their bets a little bit. But since I don't think anyone really is predicting that seriously, my guess will be that the international community will be very eager to engage with the next government. And this is why, just as a kind of fun thought experiment, I posed a question on social media, if you were the next Bangladeshi foreign minister, where would you go on your first 5 or 10 foreign trips? Because I think actually the ball is going to be in Bangladesh's court to determine how to engage and with whom to engage as priorities. And those signals, I think, will be watched very closely, both domestically and internationally. So I hope those who are preparing themselves for positions in the next government for whatever party are already thinking about some of these issues in terms of how they'll signal their priorities beyond the kind of platitudes that are in their manifestos.
So just one more follow-up question. The first 100 days, that's kind of critical for any new administration that takes over. Where do you think they should focus, given the reality that we have seen in the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I think the timing of the election is a blessing and a curse for the next government. The blessing is that Ramadan and Eid and then Independence Day will give a little bit of breathing space at the beginning for the next government to settle in as people kind of are otherwise distracted. But the downside could be a very slow start. I mean, if the next government has to wait 6 weeks before people are really ready to get back to work, including, as was mentioned before, the bureaucracy. If every bureaucrat in the country is going on vacation, and if others are otherwise occupied, then it will be hard to get that momentum and to have that kind of very kind of methodical, disciplined, first 100 days.
All right. Back to you, Shad Bhai. if you
Yeah,
had-
I was just gonna ask another question. I know there's a lot of talk about safety on election day, election engineering, administration favoring one party or another. Um, do you think an election will be free and fair for us to, to have a legitimate government forming the next government, party forming the next government? Maybe Shafqat, John, and then Fahim.
Yeah, so I have some contacts. I spoke with many people inside the government in Bangladesh, and also some of the people entrusted with the free and fair election, like people in law enforcement and all that. I think there is an overwhelming mandate and a willingness to carry out that mandate, and that is to have a free and fair election this time around. So from the topmost layer of the government to at least to the immediate junior layer, which is the secretaries and all that, they do want to have a fair election. Now, whether that will translate into an absolutely perfect election, we do not know. But there are some promising signs, by the way. We are only 6 days out. The number of electoral violence is not that high. In historical standards, this election is unusually quiet. Of course, there were some deaths, so I'm not condoning or downplaying any death. But I'm just saying historical standard says the amount of violence used to be much higher. So that's not happening. So there are positive signs that this election will be free and fair.
John?
So I think the best guarantor of a free and fair elections is an active, energized citizenry. And this is hopefully where some of the spirit of July and August 2024 will carry over. And that people, not just journalists, but citizen journalists and individuals will use their voice to highlight any discrepancies that they see at the polls. But I don't anticipate major issues. One thing though I would say, and it's been a kind of a running observation of mine, having been working in Bangladesh over decades and knowing senior politicians from all of the parties, to be honest, I can't think of one time in which any politician in Bangladesh ever told me that they lost an election. Everyone who didn't get elected told me that somehow the election was stolen from them. And this has been a consistent theme. So I hope part of what changes in Bangladesh's political culture is that the stakes are lowered somewhat, and there's an acceptance that in any election there'll be a winner and a loser. And the stakes aren't so high that if you lose, you have to go to every means possible to annul the results of that election. But instead, if you lose, you take your time and you think about why you lost and you prepare for the next election. And on the converse side, I hope winners can develop some ability to be gracious in victory. And this tone gets set at the top. So I hope that the leaders of all of the political parties and alliances are preparing two speeches right now. One is their victory speech, and the second is their concession speech.
Thank you. Fahim bhai.
Okay, on the issue of election violence,
Free fair election. Are we having a free fair election, or is there election engineering, or there'll be safety issues?
so I think like from the central, like we of course had previous experiences even in kind of 2008 election, which apparently was very free and fair. But now if you analyze the historic data, the voting trends or voting pattern, you can clearly see that there was some kind of central kind of coordination in manipulating that was not very visible actually. So I agree with Shafqat that at least this time around we may not have those kind of like centrally managed, well orchestrated, like intelligence supported kind of like initiative. But having said that, once again, this election is not like, this is something that I have been telling this for quite some time. This election is not going to be very central level of election. This is going to be extremely local level of election. And we have seen that a lot of local candidates, like no matter what we say in Facebooks, in Dhaka, those things really matter less in local level, in local voters. What matters most is their local conditions. And now, what are the local conditions in a lot of the places, we frankly don't know. Say local administration, local police. So they don't need to be kind of always like directed or dictated by like central government. So they have their own, sometimes they have their own agendas. So what type of agenda they pursue, and we know that the professionalism of our both police and administration, they have been actually destroyed for last 10-15 years. So that remains a challenge. But frankly, I agree with Shafquat that on a historical context, the violence has been very low. And you know what? I think that the political parties, all of them know that in this like social media era, any single violence can actually cause them the election. And in some of the seats where we have analyzed, we have seen that even it's very small kind of violence, like violence against women or kind of that type of thing, they are actually impacting votes. So like if a party is perceived to be kind of oppressing, the voters are actually reacting, and the newses and all those videos are getting viral so soon. So I think they are restraining themselves. Now, how long they will restrain themselves? I think every hour on 12 February, you may see very peaceful environment till 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And once in the contested seats, not all the seats, because not all the seats will be contested. I think almost kind of 200 seats, we probably by noon of 12 February, we will know, or the candidates themselves will know who is going to win or not. But in the closely contested seats, you may see a lot of violence after 2 p.m. Because the last 3 hours will be very crucial for the things. So there will be kind of efforts so that some people can't go to the vote centers and all those things. This is number one. But I'm much more concerned about the post-election violence also, because like I said, a lot of political parties, they have been maintaining self-constraint, but after 12, if whoever the party comes to power and knows that they have been elected, there will not be any such self-constraint thing. So that is much more I'm worried about.
Thank you, Fahim. Just one last question from me. That is, I mean, July, the nation came together, but it also exposed our divide. I think we're a fragmented nation. Even in how do you all see that we come together, unite everyone? And with Awami League, what kind of truth or reconciliation should happen? If you have any ideas, it's a practical and also an emotional question. So maybe John, you can touch on it a bit, and then Shafquat and Fahim Bhai.
So I visited Bangladesh twice in 2025. And on my second visit in particular in July, my main focus was to talk about transitional justice. And I was hopeful that there would be interest in some kind of truth and reconciliation process. But very soon after I arrived, and after just a few conversations, I realized that the issue of reconciliation was premature, in large part because of the lack of remorse that had been expressed then or since by the Awami League. At the same time, I left with a sense that a lot more needs to be done in the areas of truth and healing and accountability. So one of the things I was pleased to see in the manifestos was a commitment by all of the parties to having some type of truth and healing commission after the election. So Again, implementation on this is going to be critically important. There are going to be some very challenging, difficult issues for the next government to face. I can understand why, in the run-up to election, this interim government would have been reluctant to have, frankly, a lot more Awami League leaders on the streets on bail, for fear that they would then use that to organize resistance to the election. But once the election happens, and particularly if a government comes in with a strong mandate, then I think it will be in a strong position to really think about this issue of what to do about the Awami League, both what to do about the trials of those responsible for the crimes of July and August and previously, but then also what to do with those whose level of culpability is less. They may have enabled, supported the past regime. They may have been simple, voters, adherents. But I think the status quo is not sustainable. So that's going to be a tough challenge for the next government.
Shafqat, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't catch the question. Is
Question
this
is
about
like, we're kind of fragmented. I mean, our divides are visible right now. How can we come together as a nation? And with our League, what kind of truth and reconciliation do you think is appropriate? And
I mean, look, I'm a very practical guy. Right after Awami League's fall on August 5th, 2000, when that thing happened, I went live on social media and I said just one simple thing. I said, catch the largest killers and the largest thieves, count about 30 to 40 each, maybe 60 people. Punish them as soon as you can and move on. Because it's a messy process to try so many people, right? It may not sound, like insaf or maybe proper justice, but that is justice that could have been, done easily and could have been done fairly. So I still stick to it. I just want a practical, top level, the top terrorists and top thieves and top murderers, top bank, plunderers, punish those guys and move on. That's my real truth and reconciliation with punishment.
fine, bye.
No, I actually agree with Shafqat and also John. I think there has to be kind of this transitional justice type of thing. And I also think that you really can't actually go after like thousands of Awami League supporters or leaders. So you target probably not as low as probably 50, 60, but probably couple of hundreds or whatever, who have been the main kind of culprit. But like having said that, I think no matter what we actually think the right or practical approach for addressing this issue, I think it is at the end of the day a political decision by the party who is going to be in power. Say, for example, like if BNP is elected, and if BNP and if the numbers and other things show that BNP has actually gained from the Awami League band electorally, there will be every reason why BNP government should not be very kind of warm on the idea of like allowing Awami League back. But if BNP, if it comes to power, finds that like there has not been any kind of like correlation between the Awami League vote and their kind of winning in a lot of seats, so they probably will be indifferent. So, and they like I know in principle they are much more like philosophically aligned of allowing any political party, including Awami League, but on a very practical kind of motivation, they may not be very keen if they found that one of the major reasons why they have won this election is because of the Awami League voters or supporters could not go anywhere else to vote. So that may be the more practical aspect of the whole thing.
Thank you, Fahim Bhai. So we are closing in on the hour. So we wanted to get to closing remarks. For me, I think what's critical is that the spirit of July lives on through this election. I know how at least the younger generation has been moved to be involved in politics. That's a very strong positive note that we have seen for Bangladesh. We want to see that continue. We want to see a culture of democratic practice return, not just in the form of elections, but also in inter-party, you know, inter-party structure and operations as well. We want to go away from the politics of old and embrace the changes and reforms that were the promise of July. So uh, all hope is on this election that Bangladesh will be on a new trajectory. This is a very critical time for the world and for Bangladesh. This election can get us back on that track. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Shahid Bhai and then request the rest of the panelists for their closing remarks.
Yeah, I mean, I would ask the panelists maybe Fahim Bhai first, then Shafquat, and then John for your closing remarks. Then we'll close it out.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me. The closing remarks I would actually appeal to all the viewers to go for vote. And when you vote, you please, before you vote, you please give or bring the pictures of the kind of July martyrs. And kind of and just feel the kind of gratitude we should actually have to them. So this is one thing. And also, of course, please vote yes. So this has been something that we have been campaigning for last few months.
Right.
So let us kind of give big, I am very confident about the yes winning, but we really want almost overwhelming, almost 90% plus for the yes thing. Thank you.
And also have fun. It's a festive. Make it a festivity, right? So this is the right given back after many years. Shafqat.
Yeah, so one of the most interesting things that's happening in Dhaka right now, all the rich people are talking to their drivers and their kajer buas and their maid servants and rickshaw pullers, the fruit sellers on the street, who they are going to vote, because everybody's worried that they're going to vote for the wrong party. So, or the right party, whatever. And then whenever they are getting the right answer, they are feeling very happy. Whenever they are getting the wrong answer, they are feeling depressed. But I want this fun to continue. I want this enormous power that is now back to the hands of the poor people, the normal people, to continue. We want many more months and weeks like this to come in the future, where the rich guys and the powerful people keep asking their buas and the servants and the drivers, who do you want to vote? And let's just make sure this practice never stops in Bangladesh.
Thank you. John?
So I'll say this partially from the perspective of somebody who's not a Bangladeshi citizen, who's not going to be voting in the elections, but somebody who cares about the country very much. These last 18 months have been very intense. At times they've been exhilarating, at times they've been frustrating, at times they've been exhausting. And we're certainly reaching a culmination point with the election. And there'll be a lot of attention on Bangladesh over the next week by the international media, by talking heads on social media, and by foreign governments. The next government then will have the responsibility to take this process forward. But it's not their responsibility alone. And one of my fervent hopes is that all of us who care about Bangladesh will continue to pay attention to what's happening in the country, to hold political leaders accountable, to foster conversations and debate. And for me, most importantly, to help Gen Z, without whose contributions and sacrifices we wouldn't be having this conversation today, to help them find their place in a new Bangladesh. Maybe some of them will be joining the next parliament. Some of them will find other ways to serve the country in public service. Others will go back to their professional aspirations in business or working for a company as entrepreneurs, following in Fahim's footsteps, as journalists working at Centrist Nation TV and other emerging media outlets. But their voices are the ones that matter. And I think the same, frankly, about the United States. Those of us who've had our, best days behind us have an obligation to, help nurture that next generation and bring them forward. So, as I look at Bangladesh from February 13th on, I'm going to have a specific and particular attention to the young people and to try to keep them engaged in helping to build Bangladesh's future.
Thank you all. Thank you really for your time. I know it's late for John and even Shafquat. So what I just want to say one thing is July was a manifestation, was an event against one ruling party, but actually the yearning for human dignity and social justice have been going on in Bangladesh for the last 54 years. So I think it is July hasn't ended for many. It is a continuation. It will continue, and we will see our youth taking the lead, which is for me that's a very the best thing I've seen, that they are taking the lead in the change in the movements, and they'll continue to push for these changes and an equitable society and all those things, and also for justice for all the martyrs and Osman Hadi. But in the meantime, I think we should just have parties in the blocks, and we should get into the streets, have fun, enjoy this election, and this is and it will continue with that. From Bangladesh America Alliance, I thank all the guests and audience, and let's just reconvene after the election, hopefully in a happy festive mode. Thank you, everyone.
Once more, please vote yes on the referendum. That's important, and we are all pushing hard for that. Thank you all. Thanks to our guests today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.